It begins with the silence after the storm, the quiet stillness that follows the end of something meaningful, something that once filled every corner of your life. A person sitting on their bed, staring blankly at an empty phone screen, maybe waiting for a message that will never come, or someone standing by a half-packed suitcase, an unresolved chapter in their life about to close, but the weight of what was left behind still heavy in their chest. Perhaps it's the quiet grief of losing a loved one, where no words are needed, but the absence itself is felt in every breath. We've all been there, caught between the past and the present, our hearts longing for something that no longer exists in the way we remember it. This moment, this space between holding on and letting go is one of the most profound emotional dilemmas we face. It feels like a tug-of-war, doesn't it? The pull of memories, of dreams, of what we once had, pulling us backward, while life pushes us forward. The struggle is universal. Whether it's a person, a place, a dream, or a belief, there's something about the act of release that stirs something deep inside us. It's as though we are tethered to the past by invisible threads that we don't even fully understand. And yet, this struggle to let go is not just an emotional phenomenon. It's deeply embedded in our biology. It's not just our hearts that ache when we cannot let go, but our very cells, our neural pathways, our entire physical body feels the pull. We are creatures of attachment. The bonds we form, especially those that are deeply personal and emotional, shape us. They become an integral part of our identity. The end of a relationship, the loss of a dream, or the death of a loved one isn't just a mental or emotional event. It's a biological one. Every cell in our body, every synapse in our brain, is affected by these emotional shifts. It's almost as if our physiology is in a constant dance with our emotions, our memories triggering physical responses that make it harder and harder to release what we love, no matter how much we intellectually know it's time to move on. Contradiction. But what if I told you that the act of holding on to something that's already gone wasn't just emotional? What if it was changing you on a chemical, cellular, and even physical level? What if holding on to those emotions, to the past, even when it's painful, is a deliberate biological response that's wired into our bodies? It's not just about willpower or the simplicity of moving on. It's about the brain and body being deeply intertwined, reacting to our emotions with profound physical changes. When we hold on to grief, attachment, or love long after it's gone, our brains are flooded with chemicals that tell us that we need to stay in that emotional state. Neurotransmitters like dopamine and oxytocin, which are typically released when we feel pleasure or bonding, continue to activate long after the person or event is no longer present. These chemicals create a feedback loop, convincing our brains that we still need that person, that love, or that dream to survive. Essentially, our body becomes addicted to the emotions tied to these experiences. It's a paradox, isn't it? Letting go is supposed to bring relief, yet we feel more vulnerable, more exposed, and more anxious when we try. The release of dopamine and oxytocin, chemicals linked to love, comfort, and pleasure, becomes a biological reinforcement of our attachments. The brain learns to associate these emotions with safety and survival, which makes it feel like we are giving up something essential when we release them. The very act of holding on becomes self-reinforcing at a molecular level. It's no wonder that letting go feels so hard. It's not just a mental decision. It's a physiological battle against the brain's wiring. On a deeper level, our brains are designed to protect us. An attachment, whether to a person, an idea, or a dream, is often seen as a survival mechanism. The brain holds on to attachments because, in evolutionary terms, it associates attachment with safety. We hold on because our brain thinks it's helping us. But when it's time to move on, the brain doesn't easily understand that the person or situation is no longer relevant to our survival. Letting go is not just emotionally difficult, it's biologically disruptive. Our sense of security, built on these attachments, starts to crumble, and that creates a physical neurological struggle that we may not even be aware of. Provocative question, but here's the question: how can something as intangible as an emotion, grief, attachment, love, manifest so strongly in the body? How can something that exists in the realm of the psychological so dramatically alter our physical state? The answer lies in the complex way our brains and bodies are wired to experience the world. Think about it. We don't just feel emotions. Our emotions are deeply intertwined with our body's physical state. The rise in heart rate, the tightness in the chest, The heaviness in the stomach, all of these physical symptoms are the body's response to emotional stimuli. What's even more fascinating is that when we experience loss or grief, it doesn't just remain in our heads, it radiates throughout our entire nervous system. Emotions, it turns out, have a direct and measurable impact on the body's physiological state. The autonomic nervous system, which controls unconscious bodily functions like heart rate, digestion, and breathing, is heavily influenced by emotions. When we experience emotional distress, such as grief or heartbreak, the sympathetic branch of our autonomic nervous system is activated, leading to the fight or flight response. The body gets flooded with stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. This is why emotional pain can sometimes feel physical. The body is literally reacting to the emotional state as if it were a physical threat. But it's not just about stress. The brain also releases endorphins, natural painkillers, in response to love and attachment. These chemicals make us feel good, creating a sense of comfort, belonging, and even euphoria. When that attachment is severed, the drop in these feel-good chemicals can lead to emotional withdrawal symptoms, making the experience of letting go feel like a physical loss. In fact, brain scans show that emotional pain can activate the same areas in the brain that are involved in processing physical pain. So, when we grieve, when we try to let go, our brains are processing that emotional pain the same way they would if we were injured. The boundary between physical and emotional pain becomes almost imperceptible. This intersection of emotions, physics, and neuroscience is where things get really interesting. What if we could better understand the mechanics of emotional release and how it affects our brain and body? What if we could tap into this knowledge to ease the process of letting go, not just emotionally, but physically as well? By studying the brain's response to grief, attachment, and love, scientists are uncovering how deeply our emotions affect our physical health. They are learning how the brain rewires itself when we go through the process of letting go. And by understanding the physiological side of this release, we can begin to unlock powerful insights into healing. For instance, research shows that practicing mindfulness, meditation, and even simple acts of self-care can help reset the body's response to emotional pain. These practices can help us rewire our neural pathways, releasing us from the loop of attachment and the physical toll it takes on us. And the beauty of this discovery is that we are not powerless in the face of emotional pain. We have the ability to reprogram our brain's responses, to strengthen our emotional resilience, and to ease the physical struggle of letting go. The science of emotional release isn't just about feeling better, it's about understanding the deep connections between the brain, the body, and the emotions, and using that knowledge to enhance our emotional well-being. Letting go, it turns out, isn't just a metaphorical act, it's a physiological journey, one that we are beginning to understand on a deeper, more profound level. This is where the magic lies, in the intersection of science, emotion, and human growth. The power to release, to heal, and to move forward is within us, and understanding the brain chemistry of letting go can help us unlock that power. We might not be able to change the past, but we can change how we hold on to it, and, in doing so, we open the door to a future of emotional freedom, growth, and healing. Concept, backstory, and present. The concept of attachment is fundamental to understanding human relationships and emotional behavior. It begins in the earliest stages of life, when a newborn's survival is entirely dependent on the care, affection, and attention provided by their caregivers. Attachment is more than a bond. It is a survival mechanism, an intricate biochemical network that ensures the child receives the necessary support to grow and develop. In these formative years, attachment serves as the foundation upon which the emotional architecture of the adult brain is built. The chemicals involved in this process, most notably oxytocin, dopamine, and cortisol, play pivotal roles in shaping how we experience attachment, how we respond to love, and why letting go becomes such a monumental challenge. Oxytocin, often referred to as the love hormone or the bonding hormone, is released during moments of physical touch, affection, and emotional connection. It creates feelings of trust, security, and deep connection, whether between a mother and child or between intimate partners. Dopamine, the brain's pleasure chemical, is activated in moments of joy, reward, and gratification. It reinforces our desire to return to those experiences that made us feel good, contributing to the formation of attachments that can sometimes last a lifetime. Cortisol, on the other hand, is the stress hormone, released during moments of anxiety, fear, and discomfort. When we face separation from someone we're attached to, be it the death of a loved one, the end of a relationship, or even the simple act of parting, after a long embrace, the body floods with cortisol, triggering the feeling of loss that manifests both emotionally and physically. These chemical responses are not abstract or fleeting. They have profound, measurable effects on our bodies. When we form attachments, our nervous systems become attuned to the presence of the people and objects we are attached to. The absence of these attachments triggers a cascade of physiological reactions, stress, withdrawal, and longing that can feel overwhelming. These chemicals can act like a feedback loop, creating a sense of dependency that is as real and as visceral as any physical addiction. The stronger the attachment, the more powerful the biochemical responses, and the harder it becomes to let go. Historical context. To understand the full impact of attachment on human behavior, we must look back at key psychological discoveries that have shaped the field. One of the most significant contributions to our understanding of attachment came from John Bowlby in the mid-20th century. Bowlby, a British psychiatrist and psychoanalyst, developed what is now known as attachment theory. Bowlby proposed that attachment behavior was a biologically programmed system, and that early experiences with caregivers significantly shape our emotional and relational patterns throughout life. His research on the importance of early bonds laid the groundwork for understanding how attachment influences not only childhood development but also adult relationships. Bowlby's work was expanded upon by Mary Ainsworth, who designed the famous strange situation experiment, which observed how infants reacted to the separation and reunion with their primary caregiver. The study revealed that the way a child experiences attachment, whether secure or insecure, affects their emotional regulation, sense of self-worth, and ability to form healthy relationships later in life. This discovery was a monumental step forward in understanding how attachment patterns are formed, how they affect our perception of love and intimacy, and how they inform our reactions when these bonds are threatened. But before Bowlby's theoretical work, earlier research also shed light on the fundamental role attachment plays in human development. In the 1950s, Harry Harlow conducted his groundbreaking monkey experiments, which demonstrated that infant rhesus monkeys preferred to stay close to soft, comforting surrogate mothers over more utilitarian wire mothers that provided food. Harlow's experiments illuminated the importance of emotional comfort and connection for healthy development, showing that the need for love and affection was just as vital as the need for food. These findings confirmed that emotional attachment is not simply about survival. It is about securing a sense of safety, comfort, and trust that nurtures the development of social and emotional skills throughout life. In the decades following these discoveries, our understanding of attachment deepened, and the connection between early relationships and later emotional health became even clearer. Bowlby and Ainsworth's work, coupled with Harlow's findings, paved the way for a new understanding of the biology of human attachment. It wasn't just that humans needed attachment for survival. The brain itself was hardwired to form these connections, and our emotional and physical well-being depended on maintaining them. In the realm of neuroscience and psychology, attachment is increasingly seen not as an intangible, abstract concept, but as something with measurable and physical consequences. The idea that our emotions have a tangible effect on our bodies and minds is not a new one, but it has only been in recent decades that scientists have begun to understand the extent of this connection. Emotions, far from being mere psychological experiences, are now understood to be deeply embedded in our biology, influencing not just our thoughts, but also our bodies, cells, and nervous systems. The physical effects of emotional attachment and the act of holding on to these attachments can be measured in terms of heart rate variability, neuroplasticity, and even brain activity. Recent advances in neuroscience have shown that when we experience emotional attachment, especially in the context of intimate relationships, our brains light up in specific regions, the ventral tegmental area (VTA) and caudate nucleus. Areas associated with reward are activated when we feel love or joy. This surge in activity is accompanied by the release of dopamine, a chemical that reinforces our attachment to the person or situation that triggered the reward response. Similarly, the oxytocin system strengthens feelings of connection and emotional bonding, creating a sense of safety and trust. However, the true complexity lies in the process of letting go. The act of releasing or severing an attachment does not simply involve a cognitive decision to move on. It involves a dramatic physical response. When we experience loss, our bodies react in ways that are strikingly similar to the physical pain of injury. Brain scans have revealed that the anterior cingulate cortex the same region of the brain that processes physical pain, also lights up during moments of emotional distress, such as grief, rejection, or separation. In fact, studies have shown that the pain of losing a loved one activates the same areas in the brain that are activated when we experience physical injury, suggesting that emotional and physical pain are not so easily separated. Moreover, holding on to attachments can lead to changes in heart rate variability, HRV, a key indicator of the body's stress response. When we experience emotional distress from holding on to a past relationship or loss, HRV tends to decrease, signaling a higher level of stress and emotional distress. Chronic attachment and emotional holding patterns may even lead to long-term health consequences, such as elevated cortisol levels and a weakened immune system. Further illustrating the interplay between mind and body in the context of attachment and letting go. As research in neuroplasticity continues to grow, we are beginning to understand that our brains are not static but dynamic, capable of rewiring themselves in response to experience. The emotional connections we form can literally reshape our brain's structure and function. This ability of the brain to reorganize itself has profound implications for emotional healing. Just as our brains are capable of forming deep emotional bonds, they also have the capacity to release these bonds. The science of emotional release, understanding how to let go, heal, and move unease, a frontier of exploration that promises to deepen our understanding of emotional health and well-being. While the science behind attachment and emotional release is fascinating, its real-world implications are profound. Many people find themselves struggling to let go of relationships, dreams, or past hurts, often to their own detriment. Whether it's the pain of a broken relationship, the grief of a lost loved one, or the lingering effects of a toxic friendship, the inability to release attachment can have far-reaching consequences for mental and physical health. In the realm of grief, for example, those who are unable to let go of the past often experience prolonged periods of emotional distress, which can manifest as depression, anxiety, and even physical ailments like insomnia or heart problems. The inability to release the attachment to a loved one who has passed can also trigger what's known as complicated grief, a state in which the individual is unable to accept the loss, leading to an ongoing cycle of emotional pain. The same is true for those who are trapped in toxic relationships, whether it's a partner, a friend, or a family member. Staying attached to someone who causes emotional harm is incredibly damaging to one's well-being. People who struggle to let go of these relationships often experience heightened stress, emotional exhaustion, and a significant decline in self-esteem. The body's inability to release the attachment leads to a cascade of physiological responses that compound the mental anguish, often resulting in anxiety disorders, depression, and chronic fatigue. Perhaps most notably, the struggle to let go plays a major role in addiction. The compulsion to hold on to harmful substances or behaviors is a direct result of the neurobiological processes that reinforce attachment. Just as we can form attachments to people, we can form attachments to the brain's reward system. Addictive substances hijack this system, creating a feedback loop that's hard to break. The difficulty of letting go of an addiction is rooted not just in psychological factors, but in the chemical changes that addiction creates within the brain's pleasure and reward centers. In the world of modern neuroscience, there's a discovery that may make us rethink our entire approach to emotional health. A groundbreaking study conducted by a team of neurobiologists at the University of California, Berkeley, revealed a shocking truth. Prolonged emotional attachment, particularly to unprocessed emotions from grief, trauma, or past experiences, can actually change the physical structure of the brain, reinforcing addictive patterns of behavior and causing long-term chronic stress. The study, which employed a combination of brain imaging techniques, genetic analysis, and behavioral assessments, exposed how emotions that are not fully processed or released create neural pathways that trap us in a feedback loop. These neural pathways, designed to reinforce attachment, can become maladaptive, leading to unhealthy coping mechanisms such as addiction, anxiety, and an inability to heal. In short, our brain rewires itself to hold on to what we emotionally cannot let go of, making it even harder for us to move forward, heal, or experience emotional freedom. What was particularly shocking about this discovery is that these changes were not just emotional or psychological, they were biological. The brain's amygdala, the region responsible for processing emotions, and the prefrontal cortex, which regulates decision-making and impulse control, were found to be in a constant state of activation when participants in the study were asked to recall traumatic or painful events they had not yet processed. This heightened activation resulted in a higher release of cortisol, the body's stress hormone, which in turn had a direct impact on the hypothalamus, a region of the brain that controls several critical functions like hunger, sleep, and the immune system. The brain's neuroplasticity, the ability to adapt and change, had been hijacked by the emotional attachments that had not been fully released. Instead of rewiring itself in a healthy way, it reinforced the negative patterns of emotional response. The implications of these findings are profound. The study demonstrated that the longer an individual held on to unprocessed grief, resentment, or trauma the more deeply these emotions were embedded in the brain's neural architecture. Addictive behaviors, whether in the form of substance abuse, compulsive overeating, or other harmful habits, were found to be directly linked to unresolved emotional attachments. This discovery paints a stark picture. Holding on to the past, even if we do it unconsciously, can make us biologically predisposed to perpetuate unhealthy behaviors and patterns. In essence, the physical cost of holding on becomes a neurological one, altering our brain in ways that make it harder for us to release our attachments, heal, and experience growth. Now, let's bring this discovery into the real world. Meet Sarah. Sarah is a 35-year-old woman who has recently experienced the sudden loss of her mother. The grief she feels is overwhelming, but Sarah is trying to stay strong, telling herself she must move on for the sake of her family, her career, and her life. Yet, no matter how hard she tries to push forward, she feels like she's stuck in an emotional quicksand. She's unable to let go of the memories of her mother, the smell of her perfume, the sound of her voice, the last hug they shared before the cancer took her. The grief feels too heavy, too raw, and no matter how many self-help books she reads, or how many therapy sessions she attends, she can't seem to find a way out. Sarah isn't just facing emotional pain. She is also confronting a biological dilemma. Her brain is caught in a cycle every time she thinks of her mother. Her amygdala sends signals of emotional distress, and her brain releases cortisol, which heightens her emotional pain. This cycle becomes a feedback loop, reinforcing the very attachment she is trying to release. The more she struggles to move on, the more her brain becomes conditioned to hold on to the grief. Over time, this constant state of emotional and physical tension begins to affect other areas of her life. She finds herself feeling more anxious, her sleep becomes erratic, and she experiences mood swings that impact her relationships. Sarah's BOFTA is physically reacting to her inability to let go of her attachment, and in doing so, she is locked in a pattern of chronic stress. What's worse is that this pattern doesn't just stop at emotional distress. As the neurobiologists discovered, prolonged emotional attachment can trigger addictive behaviors. Sarah begins to turn to alcohol to dull the pain, hoping that it will help her forget, if only for a while. But the alcohol doesn't make the grief go away, it only provides temporary relief. The cycle continues. Emotional attachment to the past, stress and cortisol release, and the use of substances to numb the pain. The body, in an attempt to protect itself, has become biologically dependent on the act of holding on. And as Sarah's story illustrates, this is not an isolated phenomenon. It's a pattern that affects countless people who are unable to process their emotions and let go of past traumas. Sarah's dilemma is both emotional and physical, and it's one that many people face in the aftermath of a loss, a breakup, or any form of emotional upheaval. The conflict is clear. Sarah wants to move on, to heal, to let go, but her body and mind seem trapped in a feedback loop that makes it nearly impossible to break free. The very act of holding on, which once served as a means of survival and emotional connection, has now become a biological burden that perpetuates her suffering. This brings us to a deeply uncomfortable truth. The emotional attachment that we often cling to, whether it's out of love, grief, or resentment, has a real, Physical cost ***. Research into chronic stress and inflammation has uncovered startling connections between unresolved emotional pain and long-term health consequences. Studies have shown that people who struggle to let go of past wounds, whether they be old grudges, heartbreak, or grief, tend to have higher levels of inflammation in their bodies. Chronic inflammation has been linked to numerous health conditions, including heart disease, diabetes, autoimmune disorders, and even cancer. This is because unresolved emotional stress doesn't just stay locked in our minds. It manifests physically, triggering inflammatory responses that can damage our organs and weaken our immune system. Furthermore, research has shown that people who cannot forgive or let go of grudges have an increased risk of developing cardiovascular disease. This is because the stress hormones released during moments of anger, resentment, or unresolved conflict lead to chronic high blood pressure and an increased risk of arterial damage. The very act of holding on to negative emotions becomes an act of self-sabotage, creating a biological environment that makes it harder for the body to heal. In a way, by clinging to the past, we are unknowingly setting ourselves up for future physical suffering. This presents an ethical dilemma. If emotional attachment is so deeply intertwined with our physical health, can we afford to ignore the consequences of holding on to past pain? Is it possible that emotional attachment, if left unchecked can be just as dangerous as any other chronic condition? And if that's the case, what does it mean for our long-term health and well-being? In the past, we've been taught that emotions are fleeting, something we can process and move on from in time. But what if our inability to release emotions is not just a matter of emotional distress but a matter of biological survival? What if letting go is not just a psychological or philosophical issue, but a physical imperative? The uncomfortable truth we must confront is that holding on is not just emotionally exhausting, it's biologically dangerous. And this realization forces us to ask, how do we begin to release these attachments? Not just for the sake of our hearts, but for the sake of our very body. How do we break free from the feedback loops that keep us trapped in cycles of stress, pain, and unhealthy attachment? And most importantly, how do we learn to let go, truly and completely, without feeling as though we are abandoning a piece of ourselves in the process? These are the heart of the struggle to let go lies in inescapable reality. The brain resists it. This resistance is not merely a mental or emotional struggle, but a biological and psychological phenomena. The brain's resistance to releasing attachments can be traced to several intertwined mechanisms that have evolved over thousands of years. One of the most fundamental reasons why letting go is so difficult lies in the brain's survival instincts. From an evolutionary perspective, human beings are hardwired to form strong emotional bonds, primarily because these bonds are essential for survival. Attachment, whether to a caregiver in infancy, a partner in adulthood, or a social group throughout life, was crucial for human survival in the harsh and unpredictable environments of our early ancestors. Emotional attachment triggers the brain's reward system. Attachments is not a modern dilemma. It is a fundamental aspect of the human condition, one that has been explored in philosophy, spirituality, and psychology for millennia. Ancient wisdom from Buddhist teachings on attachment offers profound insights into the emotional cost of holding on. In Buddhism, attachment is viewed as the root of all suffering. The Four Noble Truths, which form the foundation of Buddhist philosophy, assert that suffering arises from craving and attachment or desire to hold on to things that are impermanent. According to Buddhist teachings, the act of clinging to relationships, objects, or even ideas traps us in a cycle of suffering and rebirth. The Third Noble Truth, which posits that the cessation of suffering is possible, offers a solution: letting go of attachment. But this is easier said than done. The teachings suggest that the only way to transcend suffering is to cultivate mindfulness and detachment, to understand that everything is transient and that attachment to the impermanent is the cause of emotional pain. In Western philosophy, the concept of letting go has been explored from a variety of perspectives. The ancient Greek philosopher Epicurus argued that the key to happiness was to let go of unnecessary desires and attachments. He believed that by freeing ourselves from the pursuit of material wealth, status, or fame, we could achieve dopamine and oxytocin, which make us feel good, secure, and loved. These positive sensations reinforce our desire to hold on. ensuring that we maintain the bonds that are vital for our physical and emotional well-being. The brain, in its evolutionary wisdom, perceives any potential threat to these attachments as a danger. Letting go, whether of a person, a place, a belief, or a dream, represents a form of loss, and loss, in the brain's terms, equates to danger. The amygdala, which processes emotions like fear and anxiety, signals the brain that something has gone wrong. The body responds with increased cortisol, the stress hormone, and the brain's neural pathways become flooded with the signals of distress, triggering physical reactions like a racing heart, shallow breathing, and a sense of unease. Discomfort that accompanies the act of letting go is not just emotional, it is physiological. It's as though the body itself is protesting, rejecting the very idea of release, fearing the vulnerability and uncertainty that come with moving forward. This response, although biologically advantageous in environments where survival depended on social bonds, can be detrimental in modern contexts where the relationships we hold on to are not always conducive to our emotional health or well-being. But the conflict doesn't end there. It's not just about survival instincts. The brain is also influenced by societal conditioning. From the time we are born, we are immersed in a culture that places tremendous value on attachment to people, to places, to ideas, and to things. We are taught to hold on tightly to relationships, to success, to memories, to status. The idea of letting go is often perceived as weak or ungrateful in many cultures. In a society that prizes individual achievement, the act of letting go can feel like admitting failure or a loss of control, and so, the brain begins to internalize these societal expectations, reinforcing the belief that letting go is dangerous, that it is something to be feared and avoided at all costs. Moreover, the neurochemical processes associated with attachment often addict the brain to the very things we know we should release. Our brains become dependent on the dopamine hit of a relationship, the comfort of familiar places, or the sense of identity tied to our possessions and goals. Each time we hold on to these attachments, we reinforce the neural pathways associated with them, making it harder for the brain to let go. Letting go, therefore, is not just a matter of emotional decision-making. It becomes a biological challenge, one that pits our survival instincts, societal conditioning, and the addictive nature of emotional attachment against our desire to move on and heal. The struggle to release a true peace of mind. In more recent philosophy, figures like Friedrich Nietzsche and Jean-Paul Sartre explored the concept of letting go in the context of existentialism. Nietzsche's idea of becoming who you are involves letting go of inherited values, societal expectations, and the attachments that confine us to predefined roles. Sartre, too, discussed the need to let go of the past in order to embrace the future and live authentically. For existentialists, letting go is not merely a process of emotional release, but a critical component of self-actualization. Historically, whether in Buddhist traditions or in Western existential thought, the act of letting go has been seen as necessary for human flourishing. But these ancient and philosophical teachings also acknowledge that letting go is one of the most difficult tasks we face as human beings. The conflict between attachment and release is not new. It is a struggle that has existed for centuries. The wisdom of these traditions reminds us that to let go is to confront our fears, our vulnerabilities, and our egos. It is an act that requires courage, self-awareness, and a deep understanding of the impermanent nature of life. This struggle is universal, and it has always been a central part of the human experience. In today's fast-paced, interconnected world, the struggle to let go has become even more pronounced. Modern society, with its constant drive for success, material gain, and social validation, often encourages us to hold on to attachments even when they are no longer healthy. Social media, in particular, has amplified this tendency. Platforms like Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter are designed to keep us connected to the past, whether it's through memories, old photos, or the constant scrolling through updates from friends and acquaintances. These platforms serve as digital museums of our past selves, reinforcing the emotional attachment to people, places, and experiences we may no longer need. We find ourselves clinging to the past, revisiting old relationships, old aspirations, and old identities, even when they no longer serve us. The pressure to hold on to these digital footprints, to the likes, the comments, the validation, can feel overwhelming. Social media is, in many ways, a reflection of society's collective struggle to let go. It's a constant reminder of what we once had, what we once were, and what we might have lost. But there is an even more profound conflict in modern society: the societal pressure to move on. In a world that values efficiency, productivity, and constant forward momentum, there is little room for the natural process of grieving, healing, or emotional release. The message is clear: get over it, move on, let go. This pressure can be suffocating. For those who are struggling with grief, trauma, or loss, society often provides little space for the slow, nonlinear process of emotional recovery. Instead, the expectation is that we should be able to move on quickly and seamlessly. This societal pressure exacerbates the struggle to let go, often leading people to suppress their emotions or attempt to bypass the healing process entirely. We are encouraged to act as though letting go is easy, as though it's just a matter of willpower, when in reality, it's a complex, biological, and emotional journey. The psychological costs of holding on are profound. When we struggle to let go of attachments, the emotional toll is felt deeply, but the mental health costs are often hidden beneath the surface. Anxiety, depression, PTSD, and generalized emotional distress are often the result of prolonged emotional attachment that has not been processed. The constant mental tug-of-war between holding on and letting go can create an emotional whirlwind, leaving individuals feeling overwhelmed, exhausted, and unable to move forward. The conflict between attachment and release becomes a source of chronic mental distress, a cycle that often exacerbates other mental health conditions. In many cases, the struggle to let go is delayed or suppressed. Denial is a common defense mechanism. Individuals may avoid confronting the pain of loss or rejection, because doing so would force them to experience intense emotional discomfort. Cognitive dissonance further complicates this process. People may rationalize their themselves they are not ready to move on, or that they cannot let go because doing so would somehow invalidate their emotional investment. This internal conflict creates emotional stagnation in the midst of all the emotional and psychological struggles we've discussed, of the gripping hold attachment has on us, of the pain of letting go, and the overwhelming difficulty in releasing the past. There lies a powerful truth that we often overlook. Letting go is not only possible, but it is essential for healing. The groundbreaking research on the brain's neuroplasticity has revealed that emotional release, the act of truly letting go of our attachments and past wounds, triggers profound and transformative changes in the brain itself. This is not just an abstract emotional process. It is a biological phenomenon that can the brain's ability to reorganize and form new neural connections throughout life plays a central role in this. Traditionally, it was believed that the brain's structure was largely fixed after a certain age, that our emotional responses and attachments were set in stone. But this is no longer the case. Researchers have discovered that emotional release, whether through therapy, mindfulness practices, or other forms of emotional processing, can significantly alter the brain's circuitry. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for executive functions such as decision-making, problem-solving, and regulating emotions, is particularly impacted. When we allow ourselves to let go of past attachments, the prefrontal cortex activates in ways that promote emotional regulation, giving us greater control over our reactions and helping us to navigate future emotional challenges with resilience. In tandem with the prefrontal cortex, the amygdala, which is responsible for processing fear and emotional memories, also undergoes significant changes. When we hold on to past pain, trauma, or resentment, the amygdala remains hyperactive, constantly signaling distress and reinforcing negative emotional responses. However, as we release these attachments, the amygdala's activity begins to decrease, allowing us to move past the emotional triggers that once defined us. This biological shift doesn't just alleviate emotional pain, it creates a new neurological landscape in which healing and growth become possible. This discovery offers a radical shift in how we view the process of letting go. It's not just about accepting loss or resignation, it's about empowerment. Letting go, as it turns out, is a form of self-healing, an act that not only releases emotional pain, but actively rewires the brain for greater emotional freedom, resilience, and control. Instead of being a sign of weakness or defeat, letting go becomes a choice that restores agency. and brings us closer to our true selves. Here is the surprising twist. Letting go is not a surrender, but a reclaiming of power. For so long, we have been taught that letting go is about losing something, a relationship, a dream, a part of our identity. We are conditioned to view it as an emotional defeat, a sacrifice we must endure in order to move forward. But the latest insights from neuroscience show that letting go is actually an empowering act. It's not about giving up, it's about gaining something even greater control over our emotional and physical health. It's not about moving on in a way that erases the past, but about choosing to release the past's hold on us, so we can embrace a healthier, freer future. The brain's plasticity offers a profound shift in perspective. By letting go, we regain control. The more we release past attachments, the more we free ourselves from the neurochemical cycles that once trapped us in patterns of emotional dependency, fear, and pain. This active release does not diminish us, it empowers us. We no longer feel bound by our past wounds or fears, because the brain itself has rewired in response to our emotional release. The process of letting go is not about erasing memories or denying our experiences. It's about transforming them into something that no longer holds power over us. We become the authors of our own emotional narrative. This shift reframes letting go as an empowering choice, not a passive submission. Instead of feeling as though we are losing a part of ourselves, we recognize that we are actively restoring our agency. Letting go is not a sign of weakness, but a declaration of strength. Strength to heal, strength to move forward, and strength to create a future unburdened by the weight of the past. This revelation is not just theoretical, it is something that can be felt deeply in a personal moment of release. Let's consider the story of Lena, a 40-year-old woman who has struggled with grief for years after the death of her father. For most of her life, she had carried the weight of his death with her, convinced that to move on would be to dishonor his memory. For years, Lena found herself trapped in an emotional cycle, clinging to the past, constantly revisiting memories of her father, and experiencing overwhelming waves of grief whenever she tried to confront her loss. Lena sought therapy, read countless books on grief, and attended support groups. But despite all her efforts, she couldn't seem to break free from the emotional weight that her father's death had placed on her heart. She felt like a prisoner of her own grief, unable to move forward. The struggle to let go seemed like a betrayal of the love she had for him. But one day, during a particularly difficult therapy session, Lena experienced something she hadn't expected, a moment of release. She didn't simply talk about her grief, she felt it deeply, allowing the emotions she had held inside for so long to rise to the surface. She cried, not in the way she had before, with the hope of pushing the pain away, but with the intention of letting go of its hold on her. In that moment, something shifted. It wasn't just an emotional release, it was a profound physical and neurological change. Lena described feeling a sense of lightness, almost as if a heavy weight had been lifted from her chest. Her body, which had long been tense with grief, began to relax. The constant tension in her muscles, the racing thoughts, the overwhelming sense of loss, they all began to fade. What was truly surprising to Lena was that, for the first time in years, she didn't feel like she had abandoned her father or dishonored his memory. Instead, she felt a deep sense of peace, a peace that came from knowing she could still carry his love with her, but without being trapped by grief. This moment of personal revelation was not just about an emotional shift, it was about a biological transformation. Lena's brain, through the act of releasing the grief that had been lodged in her amygdala and prefrontal cortex, began to rewire itself. The neural pathways that once reinforced her attachment to pain and loss were now reshaped by the empowerment of emotional release. Her ability to process grief and move forward became a new neural blueprint for how she would navigate future challenges. In that pivotal moment, Lena experienced what so many people fear. The act of letting go was not a loss, but a restoration of control. It was an act of profound healing, one that not only released her from the chains of the past, but also created space for a future that was no longer defined by her trauma or grief. This moment of release was the key to unlocking the full power of the brain's plasticity, proving that letting go is not an act of weakness, but a profound act of self-empowerment. Lena's story is a testament to the truth that letting go is not about losing, it's about regaining control over your own emotional and physical health. It is a process that rewires the brain, restores balance, and creates a new path toward emotional freedom. It is not the end of something, but the beginning of something entirely new, a life defined not by what we've lost, but by the strength it takes to let go. And in recent years, scientific research has begun to uncover the powerful physiological mechanisms behind emotional release, shedding light on how the brain responds when we let go of past emotional wounds. One of the most profound discoveries comes from the field of neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections in response to experiences, emotions, and learning. Contrary to the previous belief that the brain's structure was fixed after a certain age, we now know that the brain remains plastic throughout life, capable of significant transformation, especially in response to emotional healing. When it comes to emotional release, this neuroplasticity plays a pivotal role. The prefrontal cortex, which governs our ability to regulate emotions and make decisions, undergoes significant changes during the release of long-held emotions. Studies have shown that by processing and letting go of grief, trauma, or emotional pain, we can actually retrain the brain to respond differently to future emotional triggers. This rewiring is not just theoretical. It is supported by observable changes in brain activity. The act of letting go leads to increased activation in the prefrontal cortex, which in turn improves emotional regulation and helps break the cycle of negative emotional patterns. At the same time, the amygdala, the brain's emotional processing center, undergoes a dramatic shift. When we hold on to past emotional pain, the amygdala becomes hyperactive, heightening our emotional responses and reinforcing the pain associated with past trauma. However, during emotional release, the activity decreases and the brain's overall stress response diminishes. This reduction in amygdala activation is accompanied by a decrease in cortisol, the body's stress hormone, and an increase in oxytocin and dopamine, neurochemicals that play a key role in emotional bonding, well-being, and reward. Oxytocin, often referred to as the love hormone, is particularly crucial in the process of emotional healing. It promotes social bonding, reduces stress, and fosters feelings of trust and safety. When we let go of emotional burdens, the brain releases oxytocin, which not only helps to reduce the pain associated with attachment, but also promotes a sense of connection to others. It's this neurochemical response that explains why emotional release often leads to a sense of relief, lightness, and renewal. These neurochemicals create a powerful feedback loop, where the brain begins to associate emotional release with positive feelings, making the process of letting go increasingly rewarding. Over time, this feedback loop strengthens the brain's capacity to experience healing and growth, turning emotional release into a catalyst for ongoing neurobiological transformation. The implications of this scientific discovery are vast, not just for individuals, but for society as a whole. In a world where emotional suffering is often stigmatized or ignored, learning to let go and embrace emotional release is becoming a vital practice in maintaining mental health and well-being. Societal attitudes toward emotional health are slowly shifting, with increasing recognition of the importance of emotional resilience, self-care, and mental health. Therapeutic practices such as trauma therapy, mindfulness, and grief counseling are now more widely recognized as essential tools for facilitating emotional release. These practices help individuals process unresolved emotions, letting go of the psychological weight of past traumas and allowing the brain to rewire itself for greater emotional health. In trauma therapy, for example, **EMDR eye movement and reprocessing ** has proven particularly effective in helping individuals confront and release traumatic memories, leading to long-lasting emotional healing. Similarly, mindfulness practices, which emphasize being present in the moment and observing emotions without judgment, can help individuals gain greater control over their emotional responses and foster a sense of peace and acceptance. Grief counseling provides a safe space for individuals to express their sorrow and release the emotional burden of loss, helping them transition from a place of pain to one of healing. One particularly powerful success story comes from the work of Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, a psychiatrist and trauma expert whose research has shown how trauma can be stored in the body and mind. leading to long-term emotional and physical health issues. In his book, The Body Keeps the Score, van der Kolk discusses how trauma-informed therapy and body-based practices like yoga can promote emotional release, allowing individuals to process and let go of deep-seated trauma. Many of his patients report profound changes in their emotional and physical health after engaging in therapies that promote emotional release, with reductions in symptoms of PTSD, anxiety, and depression. These success stories highlight the transformative power of emotional release, not just on an individual level but also within the context of broader societal healing. The process of emotional release and letting go leads to far-reaching benefits for both the brain and the body. As we've seen, the act of letting go isn't just a way to move on from painful emotions. It is a form of self-care that actively improves brain health. The restructuring of neural circuits involved in emotional regulation helps individuals become more emotionally resilient, better able to cope with future stressors and challenges. As the brain rewires itself, it becomes more adept at managing emotions, leading to a reduction in anxiety, depression, and chronic stress. Over time, emotional release fosters a healthier, more resilient brain that is better equipped to handle life's inevitable difficulties with equanimity and strength. The benefits of emotional release extend beyond the psychological realm. The reduction in cortisol levels that accompanies emotional release has significant health benefits, including a stronger immune system, improved sleep quality, and lower risk of chronic diseases such as heart disease, diabetes, and obesity. In this sense, letting go isn't just a mental health practice. It's a holistic approach to well-being that can profoundly impact every aspect of our lives. Moreover, emotional release leads to a sense of closure, a term often used but not always fully understood. Closure isn't about forgetting the past or erasing painful memories. It's about reaching a place of acceptance and peace, where the emotional weight of the past no longer dictates our present and future. The brain's ability to reframe past experiences, to let go of the emotional charge associated with them, creates space for healing and growth. This process is deeply empowering, as individuals reclaim control over their emotional and physical health, allowing them to live fuller, more authentic lives. By embracing the science of emotional release, we can see letting go not as a form of weakness or loss, but as a powerful act of self. It's an act of taking charge of our emotional well-being, of rewiring our brains for greater resilience, and of stepping into a future unburdened by the weight of past attachments. In a world that often demands we hold on to things, whether relationships, achievements, or possessions, learning to let go offers a path to true freedom and healing. The science is clear. Letting go is not just possible, it is essential for both emotional and physical health. And as more people embrace this transformative process, the potential for collective healing becomes an even greater possibility, creating a world where emotional well-being is no longer a privilege, but a universal practice. In the end, the beauty of letting go lies not in what we lose, but in what we gain. We often imagine that to release something is to diminish it, to let go of a part of ourselves that we can never reclaim. But what if the opposite is true? What if, in the act of release, we are not losing, but returning to our truest selves, unencumbered by the weight of attachment? To let go is not to forget, nor is it to surrender a part of our soul. It is, in fact, a return to the very essence of who we are, untouched and whole beneath the layers we accumulate throughout life. Each act of letting go is a rediscovery of freedom, the freedom to be, to exist without the shackles of attachment, to live in the present moment unburdened by the past. What if the weight we carry isn't our love, but our attachment to what we think we cannot live without? And what if, in the quiet space left behind by release, we find a deep, expansive freedom? A freedom that was always within us, but only accessible when we chose to release what no longer serves us. In the end, perhaps the greatest gift of letting go is not the relief from pain, but the reawakening of our innate capacity for joy, peace, and connection, those things that we thought we had lost, only to discover they were always inside us, waiting to emerge. If everything we love is already inside us, then what do we really need to hold on to? What if the love, the peace, the joy, and the strength we seek are not things we must grasp or fight to keep, but qualities that arise naturally when we allow ourselves to release the attachments that weigh us down? What if the true essence of who we are is already complete, and the act of holding on to anything is simply a misunderstanding of our own boundless nature? This question lingers not as an answer, but as an invitation to contemplate what it means to live without the constant striving, without the need to possess or control, but instead to simply be, to be in alignment with the flow of life, unafraid of release, knowing that in each moment of letting go, we return closer to who we were always meant to be. In the delicate dance between holding on and letting go, there is a profound tension, one that is inherent in the human experience. Attachment gives us meaning, connection, and purpose. It binds us to others, to memories, and to dreams. But freedom, true freedom, exists in the space between attachment and release. It is the quiet place where we let go of the need to control, to possess, to define ourselves by what we hold on to. It is in this space that we find the balance between the human desire to connect and the soul's call to be. What if living fully means embracing both, holding on when it deepens our experience, and letting go when it opens us to greater possibility? Letting go does not mean abandoning connection, but rather allowing ourselves to experience life with the fluidity and openness of someone who knows that freedom is found not in what we can hold, but in what we can release. To live mindfully in this space is to live without fear, without resistance, and with the understanding that both attachment and release are essential parts of the human journey. Through this delicate balance, we find our truest freedom, the freedom to love, to live, and to let go, in the most profound sense of the word.